Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Thomas. I'm somebody. I forget my name. Sometimes it happens. You're listening to From the Hat, where we are talking by choice, chosen by random. Jessica decided to join me again this week. And I was like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I have a beautiful woman on the show a second time? And she's like, but you're not that bad looking either, Thomas. And I was like, fine. I appreciate the compliment. What's up, Jess? Thanks for coming back.
Guys, you flatter me.
Well, it's easy to flatter a woman when it's true. You know what I'm saying? That's what it looks like when I flirt, people. Please don't judge. I got it from a book.
He's doing
Uh
a great job. It wasn't the book you're thinking about.
that's right. Yeah, I don't read 50 Shades of Grey more than 3 times a year. Uh is that
It
what it
is
was
not an
called?
instruction manual.
It is no, it is not. It is. If anyone finds that romantic, I'm assuring you need to find love. There's nothing compassionate about those yeses and nos. With that said, I have a hat. I have some balls, and my hand is in the hole. Jess, tell me when.
Go.
Ooh, all right. Let's see. Oh, number 15, everybody. It's not my favorite number, but it is a great number, and it leads us to one of the topics. Boom. Sex and taboo.
I wasn't ready for scandalous.
Yeah, this is gonna be exciting. Here we got sexual expression in a natural part. Sexual expression is a natural part of life, yet discussing it openly can lead to shame and discomfort. This taboo often stems from cultural norms that view sex as inappropriate or private, despite its what ambiguity.
Ubiquity.
Ambiguity. Thank you for that. Sometimes my dyslexia is like, what are those letters? Despite its ambiguity in human experience. So, just to clarify what we're talking about today to the audience, why can't we discuss sex as a natural part of discussion without it feeling inappropriate or disgusting, or ultimately, why is it a hard topic to discuss? Jessica, as always, I send it to my guest first.
I think we've created this dichotomy between sex makes babies
Oh.
and sex is scandalous. So if it is something that creates new life, miracles, then it shouldn't be, this is the wrong way to phrase it, but then it shouldn't be used as a fun time. So I feel like we're very split as a society between what its purpose is, how we should be using it, and should it just be a tool to feel good with someone you want to feel good with?
So what you're saying in the first half is ultimately people look at it like, let's just throw a blanket over the girl with a hole in it just so we don't have to look at each other, because this is a job, because we have to make the babies, and that's all it's good for. And then the second part is ultimately like, no, I want to connect with somebody. I want to
Yes,
feel
exactly.
the
Exactly. And
human
it's
experience.
yeah, and it's right in line with how we shy away from other emotions. You can be too
Mm.
happy, you can be too sad, you can be smiling in public and people wonder what's up.
Or not smiling and have to listen to, you should smile, and it's like, yeah.
Exactly. My sister is able to tuck her whole upper lip underneath when she smiles and she looks like a gopher. So whenever anybody tells her to smile, they get like a little jump scare there.
That's funny.
I can't do it.
We don't get an example. Oh man, the poor
No,
audience.
I can't do it. Sorry. Not the reason.
um, are, are you often around people where any element of sexual discussion comes up? It makes for people uncomfortable, or they're like, that's inappropriate, or they're like, we shouldn't really talk about this. Do you find yourself around a lot of people like that?
Yes, absolutely. I have friends who run the gamut. I will have friends that you can't even say the word sex near them. They'll tell you to shush. They'll tell you it's inappropriate. And I have friends who are like, and I consider myself pretty open. I'm like, please, I don't need those details. But thank you. Thank you for trusting me with this.
You could have stopped that butt stuff. I don't need the details.
I'm sorry, what happened next? No.
I'm glad we have showers. No. Yeah, I agree with that though. Like, The intimate details between two people, 100, I could understand it, because like, why do we need to be involved? And that's not our, like, that's your thing. But like, if somebody's talking about sexual things, as if it's like generalized, it's sort of like religion. I'm highly religious, but I don't talk about my religion, or I don't really want to get into a conversation about your religion. Like, but I love talking about religion. And those are different conversations. Ones are very intimate and private matters that aren't necessarily important to discuss unless you're trying to influence someone or justify your choices in life, right? And it's like, I don't want the bias of me. Like, I'm not Jewish, but if I said I'm Jewish now, everything that comes with being Jewish, people will place that on you, right?
Right.
And I think
Exactly.
that creates a bias. So, if somebody's telling me, yeah, last night I was doing this thing with the thing and my girl, and you're like, well, now that's how I see you.
Right. Now, all of my experiences and my emotions about the topic are suddenly on you. If you're doing something you love, but now I have a negative experience with that, am I viewing you negatively? Is it that serious?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
should,
Especially with the hitting, right? Because some people like what is that, BDSM, right? So,
you know,
and other people are like, oh no, I was hit a little too hard when I was younger, and it's like, I don't like like, I get that. I get like what you said. That's a little
right.
too far. I didn't need to hear that. But the generalized conversation about those same topics, I think, are open for debate. Talking about BDSM is okay. Talking about how sex is, or the process of sorry, my cat has gas if you hear the car outside. Uh but like, I I think it's important for people to talk about these things, not to influence. Again, oh, you should be into BDSM. Like, I don't think that conversation's needed. But the idea of like, well, what is it? Or because let's be honest, and if you want to open up about this, it'd be great too. But when we're younger, who really teaches us about sex, right? Like, your first time isn't like, well, I have some idea. No, you have no idea. It's all made up.
No, you are fumbling around in the dark, maybe physically and mentally. You're trying to be like, where does this go? Where does that go?
It's your
What
uncle.
is this supposed to feel like? And I wish there was some education up there that really discussed like my only sex ed, and I'm sure this is true of a lot of people's like sex makes babies.
This is how to
That's
put the
that.
condom on.
Right. Figure out the we didn't get that.
Oh, you didn't
I
get the
didn't get
banana
that.
with the
No,
condom?
no, I didn't get the banana with the condom. It was too much for delicate youth.
Yeah.
It was kind of like rolled into the puberty talk for us. And I'm like, oh, so it's all the same. This happens, and then I can do this. I don't quite
Mhm.
understand. But I wish there was some like note comparison, because really, especially as a girl, you get like you're gonna do it the first time and it's really gonna hurt, and then you're probably gonna hate it. And I wish there were different narratives out there to say like
Yeah.
it can, but maybe it shouldn't, or you can do X, Y, and Z to mitigate that. Like I really think a good first experience is important to forward the discussion and the comfort with talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, you don't. If anyone's listening, there's a really great movie from the late '70s where I believe it's the high school one, the at Ridgemont
Past
High.
times, yeah.
Yeah, first time at Ridgemont, where the woman's having her first time and she's just staring up at the ceiling.
Yeah.
And that's not a good first experience for anybody, because they're not even connecting. They're just sort of like there. And that's what it's supposed to be filmed like. That's what it's supposed to represent. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. Like, there should be a note comparison. And again, we don't have to talk about our personal experiences, but if you talk about it in general, it helps us at least start understanding it, and that it is normal, that feeling a certain way towards somebody, whether you're feeling straight feelings or homosexual feelings, or maybe you're feeling polyamorous feelings, whatever, none of that is wrong. And if you feel these things, by the way, other people feel them. And this is what it felt like for this person. But again, everything is different. The way I might feel sexually aroused with somebody or a really good experience with somebody is going to be different than someone else. So it's good to I don't really I feel comparing it to writing is not really as emotionally powerful, but it's like with writers. They think like, oh, is the way I'm doing this wrong? And it's like, no, however you write is the way you're supposed to write. It's the way you will best explore that creative element. And the way you love or the way you express that feeling or physicality is the right way for you, especially if you find someone that you're comfortable with their desires and they're comfortable with your desires, even if there's areas that don't necessarily always match up, but there's a majority, like, hey, you like bananas, I like bananas. It's that was actually just a fruit metaphor. That was not supposed to be like a ding dong.
But we're not even at a phase where most people can comfortably talk about their desires and then have those desires comprehended and accepted.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get to that conversation?
Yeah, we definitely need to get there as a society, because the taboo of it also makes you a degenerate. Like, oh, that's what you think about, and it's like we all think about it, just different levels of it. There's no way because our bodies automatically get aroused, but there's also we choose to be aroused. Like we are.
Right.
It's just how it works. Unless you're like 90 years old, you're probably not getting aroused as much as say an 18-year-old or a 30-something-year-old. And it almost because then it also becomes that conquest, like where kids, they're just like, oh, did you lose your virginity yet? Oh, I'm gonna lose my virginity this weekend. And it's really about the virginity, and it's not really about the experience. It's not about the connection. And I'm not saying everybody has to have a connection or you're evil, but I'm saying, like, to make it a transaction, I think comes from the lack of understanding, the lack of discussion, the lack of communication. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's true, it all stems from that, but it all stems from that first conversation. We see virginity like we're holding on to something holy, something that we can't sully. And I don't know why the language is like that. I would always use, I'd like to have sex. What is my first time doing this new experience going to be like? And I always tried to shy away from using the word virginity because it felt like I don't want to lose something. I want to gain this experience. But I know that that's not typical or common.
Yeah, I agree with that. I never used the word virginity for myself, though, because I was always under the assumption that only women can lose their virginity because it represents a very specific thing of the hymen breaking. But then that also, scientifically speaking, you could break the hymen many ways.
Many ways.
Yeah, it's not just like, I liked when kids thought, and I'm saying this as I was a kid listening to other kids, and I feel like I was not a kid around kids, if that makes sense. Like, because I always read and I always wanted to understand things, and they thought like the hymen was this clear, like, wrapping over the hole, and that's what you break.
Like you're poking through cellophane or something.
Yeah, and to hear that, it goes to what we're talking about with this, is like, if that's what you think it is, you are fundamentally being misled.
It is not a fresh by seal.
Yeah, but there are also I would call them girls because they were young. We're all what, 10 to 15, right?
Yeah.
There were girls in that age range that also believed that ridiculousness of it being like this cellophane wrapping inside, and they were scared that, like, if I believe the scientific term is diphthong, went into the woman, it would be tearing this thing up. And that's frightening to have that misconception. It's not like we're cats where our penises are bobbed. That is true. Yeah, the male, and it's terrible.
I know.
Now, I didn't need to know that. Well, we're not cats, so we don't have to worry about cat fun. What is? Well, I'll say this, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on this. For me, one of my criteria for, like, kind of testing the waters of potential friendship is I may say something that is on the line and sexual. And depending on how they respond to it, I know how much time I'm going to put into that person. And it's not because I need them to talk about sex, it's that I know if they're comfortable exploring conversation. And that's important to me. And because I believe communication and conversation elevates not only individuals but society. What are your thoughts on that process? And even like the concept of doing it or not doing it or experiencing it.
Do you mean like intimate relations with your friends or just general conversations about it?
So like for example, if I met someone new and we're in a group, I might make like a penis joke, right? And then if they're like uncomfortable with the penis joke, I know that I'm not gonna be able to explore most topics with this person because if the penis is uncomfortable, how uncomfortable is thinking about the biology of existence or expanding beyond that is a red background, because in my experience, when we restrict speech, we restrict learning and growing. So that's in my experience though, and that has molded me to make sure that I surround myself with free thinkers or people that want to because sometimes it's just funny talking about stupid things, and sometimes it's really a 4-hour conversation about anything going everywhere and anywhere. I think is so pure in a relationship, friendship or otherwise, that like to experience a first wall with something as mundane as have you met my friend Richard? He's a real dick, right? Like, the balls on this guy. And they get upset. Like, I don't have time for that because I want to live. I want to experience people. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds fair. I think if you have to police yourself too much, you end up feeling stifled and you can't grow the relationship with the person in any direction you choose.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like in that situation, more so where you talked about something or something came up and you got such a visceral response, even in a slight like, really, do you have to say stuff like that? What are you, immature? Like, and then you're just like, maybe I miscalculated this potential friendship or whatever.
Yes, exactly. And I think we've all been there. And those friendships are either very uncomfortable if that person is still part of the group, or I leave the group or that person leaves the group because the dynamic just isn't the same or correct anymore.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable when you're just like, what can I say? And it's like, well, why do you have to think about what you're going to say? Are you deprived? It's like, no, it's not that so much. It's just, I mean, I've been around people where if I said Jesus was Jewish, they get upset. And you're like, why are you upset? If I say he probably wasn't white, if anything, he was probably the tonality of an Egyptian because Egypt. Moses was definitely not a white dude, so but anyway, I also come from a family like my grandmother when she was probably in her late 70s and I was probably in my 20s, maybe late 20s. One time I was like I walked into the house, whatever. And I was like, "Hey, grandma," and she's like, "You going to your cousin's wedding?" I was like, "Yeah, you?" And she goes, "Yeah." I go, "Where are you sitting?" She goes, "I don't know, but if you can't find me, just look for the hottest guy I'm not related to. I'll be under the table." And like to me,
Grandma.
yeah, but like it was so funny because I know she's not serious. A, I know her knees are bad. And two, it would be inappropriate to actually physically be doing that. So there's no way my brain is like, my grandmother's disgusting. Why would she even think of doing that? And it's like, no, she didn't say anything wrong. She just said what had to be said to get me to laugh.
Mm.
And it's like, imagine not being able to have that memory or that moment with my grandma would be terrible.
It's like the family version of know your audience.
Exactly. Yeah, like she wouldn't say that to her Catholic priest.
How open was grandma?
Maybe grandma's pretty funny. She got to that I'm too old to care stage,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. My dad is the jokester. My dad is that's my humor is. That's my father. I'm a younger version, and breathing.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah,
This would be the craziest weekend at Bernie's setup ever.
uh, they made a second version, the part 2 to that, and that's when they lost me. The first one was so good, so good. If as an example, if you had children, where where would you feel would be the appropriate time to allow that kind of dialogue to be presented to a child? Again, this would be your
If
child
it
you're
were,
raising. Yeah, it's not like you're talking around someone else's children, because obviously they have rules for that. But
yeah, no, the internet, I think, speeds up this conversation because you can find so much. Ideally 11 and 12 before their friends start to provide information.
oh
Like
yeah,
I think my first talks about this were like on the back of the bus in 7th grade. I'm like, what are you talking about? No one's ever told me this. That's
oh yeah.
scary. And then you go home. So I'd want to avoid that. And I'd want to develop trust. And I'd
Mm,
want them to develop a way to say no and to develop that autonomy within themselves and within their bodies so that if something does happen, they have the vocabulary to articulate what they don't want, what they do want, what does and doesn't feel good. I'm not of the belief that if children know young, they'll do it young. I am of the belief that if you instill them with all of the facts that you can and answer those tough emotional questions for them, they'll have the tools to make the decision when everything feels right.
yeah, and I think 7 too is definitely when their brain is starting to understand the concepts. They're putting things together, because by 8, 9, or 10, they are their frontal lobe is developed in a way that allows their personality to also come through. So that's a really great way to approach it. I've always been under the if I would ever have kids, uh, is that I think it's okay to talk about the biology of sex always, but not the derogatory of sex. So, for example, like, hey, did she blow you? Like, that's inappropriate. But if I could teach my child what a penis and a vagina is, what the reproduction process is, what sperm is, what eggs are, what, the XY chromosome and the XX chromosome, like all that is science. And none of that, I think, is inappropriate at all. Understanding that breasts are there, that they have milk sacks, and that's where they feed the child if they so choose. They don't have to. They could do formulas, and now you're like, oh, I'm learning about that whole stuff. Like, I think that's all important. I also think it's important to be like, at a certain point, you're gonna hit whatchamacallit, not pre you're gonna mature, you're gonna hit your puberty, and you're gonna start having feelings and thoughts. And every single feeling and thought you have is normal. And when you start feeling those things, just tell me and we can talk about it. Right now, they're not there, but I will tell you, you'll start having desires. You don't really know what that means right now, but like, all this is science. None of it is inappropriate in my opinion. And it's just as important as knowing what a car is and a bike is, and what hello is and goodbye. And because, you ever watch a movie and, like, you always see the scene where, like, the father or mother walks in and, like, their 5-year-old is hanging out with, like, the 5-year-old neighbor, and he's taking his pants down, and she's like, yours looks different than mine. And that's, like, usually a scene in, like, a parent, like, a dealing with.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they don't know who to talk to about that, because of what we're talking about is no one discusses it. But if, like, your child knows what a penis is, they're not gonna be like, what is that? You can't touch mine, you broke yours. uh you know, that's from an old Far Side joke. But anyway, What are your thoughts on that too? Do you think it's appropriate to educate? Uh, you know, well, you were saying 7 start really letting them understand, but I'm talking more about the biology of it, not necessarily the sexual process of it.
But
You know,
yeah, I think the general biology of it, as young as they can understand, I think having knowledge of your body, what the parts are and what they do, is important. And you can make the distinction between this is your biological function. And it's especially important too when it comes to like cleaning. There are some kids that are afraid to wash themselves because they don't want to touch that place because they've
yeah,
been told it's a no-no place or it's bad.
yeah, it's
Um,
literally called the no-no place.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, because boys too. They don't want to. Oh, it feels weird when I touch it, and it's like we got to talk about that. Like it shouldn't feel weird. You shouldn't feel uncomfortable. Or like I think it's also good when a boy or a young girl starts not necessarily feeling uncomfortable being naked in front of a parent,
mm,
but I think it's good for them to be able to vocalize that.
yes,
I think there's a difference between shying away and feeling I'm sorry, I can't think of the word, but feeling like not necessarily embarrassed, but
mhm.
like
Not
dirty
shame.
almost. Yeah,
Yeah,
shame, the shame. Perfect. To be like, well, they shouldn't be looking at me. So something is wrong. And it's like, nothing is wrong. If you want that privacy and you're aware of that privacy, say it. And that starts teaching them consent, and the power of consent. And even with like my nephew, like when I had to get him in the shower, I go, look, do you want me to be in there to help you, or do you want me? And he'd be like, no, I could do it myself. I was like, but listen, you got to leave the door open. I can't see you,
right,
but just in case you fall or you need me, I don't want the door locked. I'll keep it closed per se, but not shut. And it's like, because I need to protect you. You're still a child.
right.
But I was able to have that conversation with him, and he was able to tell me, I'm okay. I
Yes,
don't want. And I was like, yeah, and he's like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, I don't need to see you naked, but I do need to know. I have to trust you when you tell me you cleaned everything. Because before he would go in, before he got undressed, I'd say, all right, show me how you're going to clean yourself. And he would wash here, he would do that, and he would show me
mhm,
cleaning his crotch, but he was clothed. And I'm like, great. And you remember your toes, you got to do your feet and toes. And then he would show me, and then I was like, all right, now when you go in there, just do that, but with soap and water. And he'd be like, okay, uncle. And then he'd go in and he'd come out, and I go, all right, did you clean everything? Because I'm going to trust you when you tell me you did. And if you didn't, it's also okay. You just need to know that you do have to clean those. And some parents are uncomfortable with that conversation.
it's true. But that conversation is so important. Those early conversations around trust, consent, and autonomy extend way further than anything sexual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I'm sure you've dealt with this when you were younger, and maybe from 10 to like 16,
Mm,
like where a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, like they kiss you, and you're like, I don't need either. You're really close to the lips, or I don't want to be like you don't have to kiss me. You
sure.
know what I'm saying? Especially in an Italian family, they always like lip to lip, and I'm just like, I don't need that. You know?
You smell funny, stay away.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you wearing? What is that? Did you have a shower? Um, But if you said no, or if you squirmed, you go, what are you doing? You kiss me. I'm your grandma. I'm your this. I'm your that. And you're like, if you ask me for a kiss and I say it's okay, then let's kiss. But
Right,
I'm saying no, you know,
right.
just because I'm
These,
a child.
right. It's children's voices are not often well heard.
Adult voices are often not heard as well, which is crazy.
I know.
Hey, do you want to try blank, blank, blank? No, I do not. Oh, but why not?
Well, if if you've tried it before and you didn't like it, you just haven't tried it with me because I'm the best at it.
Yeah, I'll make you feel comfortable with it, but you're not making me feel comfortable with it
Yeah,
now. Well, because maybe you're just not sure, and you're like, okay, well, you're not listening to me. You know, like,
Right.
you're
Please
being a
don't play
spoonza.
salesman, right? Please don't play salesman with my body. I'm good.
You want a foot massage? Yeah. Why are you grabbing my breast?
This is not what we do.
Yeah, you went slightly above the no zone. Just, it's true though. It's true. There's also that interesting thing though, with the reverse of that, where girls are touchy with guys, but like if the guy says no, they feel, because of the culture they're brought up in around their other guys and stuff like that, like if I say no, there's something wrong with me. So they let it happen, and then they're like, I achieved some, like they have this I achieved something mentality, like, I got a girl to touch me, or and I think that's also an important conversation to have, is that you can
Yes,
say no.
absolutely. Yes, little boys and teenage boys and all the boys, no matter the age, are also allowed to say no.
Yeah, yeah, and I just never understood that, like because I was in the music industry, and I performed under the stage name Lord Telmore Altanian, which is clearly not Thomas J. Bellezza. And girls used to come up to me all the time after a show, especially if I was dressed up in the garb, and they'd want me. And I'd ask them the same question every single time. I go, "What's my name?" And they go, "Lord Telmore Altanian." And I
Yep.
go, "Then I'm not interested." And they'd be like, "Why not?" And then my friends and everybody I was with, like, "Why wouldn't you?" Well, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't smoke, and I don't just have sex. Like, they only want me because I'm the thing they saw on stage.
Right. You're the character. So then you as Tom doesn't exist in that moment. And for
Mm-hmm.
some reason saying no, not to you, because you're good with boundaries, saying no is somehow a challenge to your masculinity that's rippling to everyone else in the room.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, which is so mind-boggling, because even the women in that industry, you know what I'm saying? Like, if they said no, they would be judged, but they would also be judged if they said yeah too. Let's be honest.
right.
Like, oh, you're sleeping with everybody. He's like, yeah, but so's Tommy Lee. Uh, but I never understood that. I never understood when I saw people just take a girl on a bus. I'm just like, why? And they're like, and then you'd have that conversation. Like, well, they offered themselves, and it's what we have to do. We're on tour, and you're like, oh, I get. Oh,
Right.
you're being, it's the behavioral training, and you're being conditioned to think that this has to happen. And I'm very sexual, but like like you said, you have to have boundaries even with that sexuality. How do you think would be an appropriate way for even an adult to discuss boundaries, or so that's my first question. So how do you think what do you think is a really good positive way to discuss boundaries, and also what is a red flag to discussing boundaries?
Um, right off the bat, a red flag to discussing boundaries is people who don't want to hear any of your no's or your dislikes, or people who always expect you to be in a good mood and up for anything, right? People who can't handle anything even remotely negative. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always found a great way to discuss boundaries is to talk about things that you like and you're willing to do, things you don't know you like but you're willing to try under the right circumstances, things you don't like and will not do, things you've never experienced but know you will not do, and things that you've done but you're not sure about but may try
Mm.
again. So the conversation has to be a lot larger than please never lick the side of my face. That's it. uh,
Yeah, so not a conversation over coffee.
yes. And certainly before you are in a position that could be perceived as vulnerable. Because I've found if those conversations don't happen prior to, you end up saying yes to things that you would
Oh,
not otherwise because you're there, or
you're
you
being
worry if you,
aroused.
right, exactly. Or you worry that if you say no, it's going to cause a commotion or fight.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. They might leave. So you have that. So yeah, I can understand that. I I've always like right before that. So like instead of cuddling in bed, like say naked with somebody, and then discuss, like more on the couch, you're watching television or you're relaxing after dinner, and you're just sort of like chilling. Maybe you're outside on the porch and you're just cuddling that way. I think there is a vulnerability there, but it's nice to feel safe. But if you don't feel safe, like if you have the feelings you're talking about, I think that is a discussion too. That's like you know how open I talk to you about, like how open I am with girls and stuff like that, or women. Um, like I'm so not necessarily confrontational, but I confront my thoughts and my feelings, and when somebody says to me like, "Oh well, I think you blank blank blank," and I go, "Well, why don't you ask me? Like, if you feel I am upset at you, ask me." But I assure you, if I am upset at you, I will tell you, but not because you did something wrong, but because I feel upset at something that happened, and I want to make sure that I'm perceiving it right, so I don't live with this feeling, because I'm supposed to love you. And if I love you and I'm having these feelings, something's going on with me, and I got to make sure that I am perceiving your behavior correctly. And that's how important communication is. I mean, like, you can't really enjoy a human being if you're just like, maybe they're mad at me, maybe they don't like me, maybe
Maybe
like,
it's way more fun to text your friends and play group detective. Please don't do that.
oh yeah. Like, what happens when? And you're like, just talk to them. Yeah, but
I
what if they
don't.
get mad? Then they get mad, and you'll learn if this is the relationship for you. Like, it's okay for them to respond inappropriate to your response, because that tells you something, right? Like, I mean, obviously, if they hit you, you learned a lot. But if they're yelling at you because you said, "Hey, I was wondering, could you do the dishes?" And they go, "What do you mean? I have to do the?" And then you're like, "This might not be the relationship for me."
Exactly.
Like, I love the negative truth. I don't want the negative truth, and like, obviously you want to experience good, but when I start experiencing the negative truth, I do follow-ups. Like, why are you upset that I put the spoon in the drawer wrong? Like, what is that? Is there something else going on? Or like, why do you think I did that purposefully to hurt you? Like, those are the words you used. You said you put the spoon backwards in the drawer purposefully, knowing that my ex used to do this and it bothered me. Like, maybe
There's something deeper there, of course.
yeah.
There's a deeper that you want to explore, address, and continue on with.
Yeah, but you get enough of those, it's not the relation. Like, hey, you're not putting the mat up when you're done. I don't use the mat.
Oh,
What do you mean you don't use the mat? Well, you told me that I never put the mat up, and I told you that I believe you're the one leaving the mat down, and you told me you never leave the mat down, so I stopped using the mat. And if the mat continues to be on the ground and not put up, and one of us is out of the equation, I have proven my theory. So you don't use the mat on purpose? Well, yeah, because I kept getting yelled at.
you tricked me.
How dare you use logic? No, you got to be careful. You got to be careful with that stuff. But it's good to communicate it. You got to be like, what's going on? Yeah. So when it comes to sex and taboo, I like to look at it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I like to look at sex, not the act, obviously the intimacy of sex. There's a deeper level to this. In some cases, I might even say there's a spiritual emotion to it. But the concept of sex as dialogue, I would literally put on the same level as talking sports, religion, politics, food. Like, it's a discussion. Like, they're words, they have meanings, and they're a part of the lexicon. And I don't think they have inherent evil or like, mischievous intent, you know, like you know what I'm saying? What do you, how do you feel on that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I agree with you. The topic for any of those things to discuss isn't an inherent negative or an inherent positive. And there are so many nuances depending on the way the conversation goes that it's worth it to explore those threads. Certain things can always come up, but it's nice to be able to talk about them and have the conversation flow where it does.
Yeah. Yeah. The flow is so important too. It's like, you know, oh wow, I not only do I feel comfortable with this person, but we can explore the topic. We can go other places. We can do you ever find yourself though with somebody, a friend or otherwise, and you're like, well, maybe they're talking about this particular thing, in this case, sex, too much. Like, is there a too much?
Yeah, I think there can be a too much, and I think that happens with people that are really, really into something and it is their only hobby, or they're trying to talk about it to get you to talk about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
What
depending on, huh?
what would be an example? You don't have to use a personal example, but what would be an example of something like that?
If somebody's like, I really like blah, 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 it's worth exploring such and such. And then they just stare at you with this long, lingering yes. You're like, oh, it's my turn to talk, but I'm not going to talk about this.
Yeah, but how can you not be into blah blah blah?
I think blah, blah, blah is too messy.
Blah 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 can be too messy. The blah part is not that bad, but when you get to the blah blah,
Exactly. It's
yeah. I mean, obviously, anything like if somebody's talking about apples for an hour straight, you're like,
okay. I get it. All the facts. I have nothing to contribute. They
you
are
like apples.
delicious.
Got it. Um, what about this phrase? Is that all you think about? What are your thoughts on that? And
Ooh,
obviously, it's in reflection to sex, though. Like
mhm.
when someone says
The only times that I have used that phrase
that. Hmm.
is when the topic of sex or something surrounding sex got brought up too many times for my liking when I have already shut it down with a particular person. And I think once you get to that point, you stop seeing other things about the person. And that narrow focus can be upsetting. It's kind of like, and this is really popular when like butt stuff comes up and people are like, you really, nobody's iffy about it, right? You fall into one of two camps. But it's the people that keep badgering about it, badgering about it, badgering about it. And then your headspace comes, that's all you think about. Stop. And it doesn't matter what else they think about. You've already shut down the conversation, but it continues independent of you.
Now, just for clarification, are you talking specifically like they are saying sexual things towards you, or for the implementation to implement the sexual element, or are you talking generally like they make a funny sex joke every day? They make sex jokes.
Oh, the
Or something.
first. The
The first. Oh
first.
yeah, all right, yeah, yeah. I 100% agree. Like especially if you set that boundary, you know, like especially if you're like, I'm not into you. But even if you're in a relationship, again, you're not what is the word, beholden, is that the word? Or
Yep.
yeah, like, well, we're married, well, and like that doesn't mean sex, like that just because I am your wife or a husband doesn't mean you can come over. And usually you can make a move, and usually they reciprocate because you have that unspoken freedom. But a hand gesture or a no, I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
Like I get that. Yeah, but the time, but talking about sex in general every day, that wouldn't necessarily prompt you to be like, is that all you like, as in a judgment? That's all you think about?
No, I don't think so. For me, once that phrase, that's all you think about, comes to mind, it means other needs aren't met in other areas. And
Mm.
I'm narrowing in on the thing I don't want to do or the thing I don't want to hear about as that person's entire personality.
Oh yes, okay, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because even if you don't connect on everything, there still has to be a variety to individuals. Like you love hiking, right? Not everyone loves hiking, for whatever reason, be it medical or whatever. But it's still okay. Like, but imagine that's all You said.
Right.
Like, why?
Okay.
Yeah, you can't go hiking. Well, I love hiking, and I think it's crazy that you don't go hiking. I'm gonna go hiking every day, and I think you don't love me because when I go hiking, you don't go hiking. And is that all you think about? Like it's that's basically what you're saying. Like it's on the same level as like, hey, there are other things we can connect with.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful, actually. Yeah. Like me, I love cinema or storytelling or you've heard me go passionately about writing and stuff like that. Uh, but again, there were other things you and I have talked about because talking about writing all day every day would also become
I would make you read my teenage poetry.
and I would read it happily. You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, you have a lot of flowers opening up in these poems. What are these flowers?
It's literal.
It's literally, is that all you think about is flowers? What else can we? Do you have any thoughts? Let me throw it. Do you have any thoughts on the sex and taboo that you'd be like, I'm curious about this. I'd like to talk about this.
No, I think I'm all set. I think that removing the taboo comes from first having a comfort about our own bodies and just conversations surrounding that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's yeah. So anyone's listening, remember, if you're uncomfortable talking about it, and this is not a knock or a negative, but it means that maybe you should do some work to feel comfortable about it because there's something else happening. And you're not bad or wrong for not wanting to talk about it. That's a choice. But it's that uncomfortableness that there is a trigger there. There is a trauma there. And it's those kind of things can hinder you from other things that you might not be aware of. And, I definitely have triggers and traumas that affect me on certain topics, but at the same time, that freedom, might be hindering you to explore something, which might be boundaries, which, like we were talking earlier. Like if you're having fears to talk about sex, it might also be as limiting as I'm uncomfortable talking about what are my no's because I have my fear of. So it's very important to do the work for yourself as well, just as a protective measure, because you might find yourself in a situation where you're like, well, I felt I had no way out. I had no option. I had no, and I think the taboos of sex and the society and culture of that taboo almost weaken us as individuals to live that fear,
Mm-hmm.
and I just think it's important that but I'm also a proponent for free speech to discuss all topics because again, in generalization, not in my way is the highway. Like that comment, like go in the corner. I don't need your echo chamber, but I'm willing to discuss. Like I love discussing politics, but I don't like Trump is this and this person's that. Like I don't need that. Like we can't have that conversation because you're not having a conversation. You're dictating your position and you're allowed to have that position. So am I, and if my opposition, I'm not going to try to change you. That's not my job. Like those conversations, I think get very uncomfortable. Would you agree with that? Like,
They absolutely do.
yeah, it's like, why are you telling me I'm wrong? Like, these are my feelings on a thing. Like, we don't need the opposition. No, that's it's like if you said I like green and I'm like, no, blue is the best color. And now we have like, why are we arguing?
Right. I saw this meme on social media a very long time ago, and I don't know who to credit to, but it was like an influencer being like, I like oranges, but if you say you like oranges online, somebody will come in and be like, but I like apples. Why didn't you think about apples? And the being talked at is so painful.
Yeah. Did you send that to me? Because I remember seeing that too.
I probably did.
Yeah, because it's so true. It's like apples are so delicious. Oh, but you don't like orange? And yeah, it's like you can't say anything on the internet as long as you just be like everything. It's like you're not allowed to have an opinion. But there is a difference between going, apples are the best thing in the world, and if you think otherwise, you're a piece of shit. Like, that's a different conversation. But if you're just like, I really like to have the apple I ate today was so delicious, and it's someone's like, what do they call them? Mouth breathers? The people that complain. I don't even know what that term means. I just know that people call each other mouth breathers on the internet. My new favorite thing that I hear people say is palm colored people. Have you heard this one yet?
No, I don't know this one.
It's a knock. It's an insult. It's where they're like white people are palm colored people now, and it's quote unquote taking back power. And now you're as useless as the white under my palm, and you're just like, thank you.
I took it like hearts of palm, like the food. Oh.
No, palm colored people.
Oh,
that's really nice. It's very inclusive. It's compassion, lots of compassion. Yeah, but so I guess that's it. I guess sex and taboo. I think we got it. I think we I feel confident about this discussion.
Okay, happy to hear it.
Yep. Will I be getting your thesis on this later?
Yes, absolutely. You're going to get 5,000 words, Times New Roman, double spaced. I haven't changed my font since high school. I don't know. Everyone says Times New Roman is dated, but I can't get with it.
Is it dated, or do you think it's like living the single life? That's really the question. Thank you for listening to my dad jokes. All right. Anyway, Jessica, thank you so much. The first time you were on, I didn't ask this question, so I'm going to ask. Do you want? Is there a way people could reach you, find you, discover you, or are you staying hidden like like some of us do?
Oh yeah, I guess if anybody wants to come hang out with me and see my random nature pictures, you can find me on Instagram at Jess2_hikes.
Nice. And that's 2 underscores, not the words 2 underscores.
Yes, exactly. Because 1 underscore was taken, and now and now that person, I can no longer find them. But yeah, at one point.
There's a really funny thing about the double up like that. When I used to play the video, like Call of Duty online, like when I was back in my youth, my friend and I, we were on teams, whatever. But there, you'd always see McLovin was the big name at the time. So everyone was like McLovin, but it was like McLovin 783-457-1230, right? And there was this. I was quiet while we were playing for this particular session. I am not normally quiet. I normally am talking and making jokes, but I was just quiet, and you just hear my other friend just laughing. Everyone's like, he's just laughing like that, and the reason is because this guy McLovin 783-457 or whatever, he's just ripping on everybody in the room, but he then stops and then goes into this conversation. It's a mundane conversation about the best French toast he had ever had. But he's talking to one of his teammates.
Doesn't realize he's talking to everybody.
Yeah, but remember, it was like maybe 15-20 minutes of just pure ripping everybody apart verbally, and just, I slept with your mother, like stuff like that. Like, and then it was just like, oh, Chris, I gotta tell you, I had this French toast the other day. You don't even understand. Like, I was in heaven. And he's like explaining like the flavor of it, but he's just and we're all trying to win the game. And all of a sudden I just start going French toast, because that's what he sounded like basically, right? And I'm just like, I go, Mr. McLovin 783-74-157, and I just read out like the whole number. I was like, Mr. Original, and I just started going off on him, and like the whole play, everybody on the game stopped. Like, normally you're running around in Call of Duty. Everybody stopped because the whole room was just laughing so hard. Because I was just ripping on his name, because there's a difference between like McLovin 3, because you're like, oh, you're the third person. But when there's 12 numbers,
right? How many of you are there?
Like, move on, buddy. But it was so funny because like the French toast thing was just hysterical. But anyway, all right, that's neither here nor there. I'm sorry, everybody.
That's all right. No, it's also very rude to talk about French toast unless you have enough to share with the class.
I'll make you French toast, not like I won't turn you, I won't transmutate you into French toast, but I'll make you some nice French. I'm really good at the French toast.
Perfect.
You know, excellent cook. Excellent. Anyway, I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. I found mice in the mouse hat, just so you know. And you're listening to From the Hat, and we're talking by choice, chosen by random. I'll see you next time. Bye.